Hey, I'm Jesse. Let's have a devotion. We're going to look at Daniel 2, 34 and 35. I'll give some context for it. And we're going to show how it's fulfilled in Revelation. We're going to look specifically at chapter 19, but there are many other aspects of the fulfillment of this particular part of Nebuchadnezzar's vision. Nebuchadnezzar had a vision, but he didn't say what it was. And he asked all the diviners and mediums and interpreters of Babylon to not only interpret it for him, but tell him what it was. And so everybody has to just believe in good faith that he's going to confirm the vision that he had is the vision that's being described. And so the mediums refuse to participate. They're like, no one's ever been asked to do this before. How can this possibly be known? Well, Daniel hears about it, and it's really just an attempt at a cull. In fact, I think that Nebuchadnezzar, son of Nabopolassar, having just inherited the reins after coming in and kicking Egypt's tail, as a general, was just kind of getting rid of the old guard, and that's why he asks an impossible task. Now, this of course puts Daniel and Hananiah and Azariah and Mishael, also known as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in mortal danger. But Daniel just asks for time, and God shows him the vision and its interpretation. He then meets with Nebuchadnezzar and describes Nebuchadnezzar's vision to Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar saw the golden top layer of his own Babylon to be followed by Persia, to be followed by Greece, to be followed by Rome. And at the base of the statue, something unusual is described. It's an unhealthy marriage of iron and clay. These two do not go well together. They do not last together. Have you guys seen the videos that pop up on social media feeds? Read feeds, real feeds. There it is. Sorry. I promise I know about social media. This guy and these carpenters have started fusing like old ancient like redwood slabs with epoxy. And it's got all these cool colors in it, and you can put stuff in it, and you can put lights through the epoxy that interacts with the cool shapes of the old wood. And it's kind of this fusion of something futuristic and cool with something that's ancient. And it looks really, really rad. But the first time I saw one of those videos, I wondered, like, are those going to delaminate? Especially guys who don't really clean the wood aspects of it, and they just pour in epoxy into a mold and they let it cure for what must be, I don't know, a week or more. And then they produce the table and they deliver it, and the thing must cost 10 grand. And I can't help but wonder what these tables are going to look like in 20 years. Are they going to stay fused together? The ones that are concealed completely in epoxy seem to have a better shot, but a lot of these guys will put them through a planer, and it's just wood and epoxy and wood and epoxy in splotches inconsistently throughout this 10-foot table. So I think they look amazing. I would never pay 10 grand for a table. But are they going to last? The iron and the clay at the base of the statue, they can't last. And the wording that's used here is, like, I use the term unhealthy marriage because that's sort of evoked in the names, one of the names of one of the churches to whom the letters are written at the opening of Revelation, describing kind of this unhealthy marriage of the church and the state. And there's another passage that uses similar language, and it's Genesis 6, the Nephilim, wherein you have demons leaving their proper place, interfering. And that interference leads to just this unhealthy mixture that's not sustainable. When we see the Gospels and the book of Acts tell stories of demonic possession, it never goes well. It never lasts. It's always destructive for the human, and it's ultimately not sustainable, to the point that even when demons are inhabiting these two men in a town where Jesus is doing ministry. The demons ask to be cast into a herd of pigs. And so they are seemingly territorial. It's why they're called principalities. It's why in Daniel 10 you see that there's one demon that presides over Persia. Another one is waiting for Greece to arrive, like 150 years ahead of schedule. And these demons possess people, and the results are horrific. A man is cast out of society and no longer functional. He's also incredibly physically strong, which is odd. There's a young woman in the book of Acts who's able to predict people's futures, which to me speaks of just demonic subterfuge. The same demons that would make predictions would then make those predictions come true somehow, perhaps. Also, there's a man in the Gospels whose son is given to seizures, and by the uh, kind of usurping of his own agency over himself by this demonic possession, is thrown into fire, thrown into water. And the disciples all come and they try to deliver this boy from this demon, and not one of them can do it. And this father, who's just exasperated, comes to Jesus, and Jesus explains to his disciples later, who were unable to see the boy delivered, that this kind can only come out by prayer. I think about that story a lot. My son Aiden, because he was born without a trachea and had to be trached in part through his esophagus and breathed through a fistula connecting his esophagus to his bronchi at the top of his lungs. He would also develop foam at the corner of his mouth. And so that passage just really struck me. And I'm amazed at Jesus's care and grace with which he speaks to this distressed father. And you know that there's an absolutely overwhelmed mother somewhere in the picture. She's just not in this particular encounter with Jesus. And he asks with this beaten up, bedraggled, tested and failed faith repeatedly, if you can do anything. And Jesus' response is like, if I can. Everything is possible for him who believes. Those words like got me through a lot of nights living at the hospital. Everything is possible for him who believes. Jessie never talks about it, but she was in mortal danger too. Women die of preeclampsia and hypertension and blood loss and requiring blood transfusion. One blood transfusion is a big deal, and Jessie had multiple blood transfusions and preeclampsia and hypertension. The nature of the twins' birth was such that it's an anomaly. Aiden was not able to take in amniotic fluid, and so his placenta, they're fraternal twins, Asher and Aiden. So Aiden's placenta had grown outsized. This pressed Asher against the uterine wall with his head curved, and so he was born with torticollis, and it took a lot of physical therapy to get his head to sit up straight. Asher himself was in intensive care for a long time after he was born. He had his own struggles, his own issues, even well beyond the jaundice. He was just very premature, and like, praise God, he thrived and did well. But he has his own story. Jessie has her own story. Aiden has his story, and all of these are the story that all kind of happened at once. I thought I was going to be a widower with one child, Austin, and then just memories of my dead wife and two other sons. This is before Asa and Autumn Grace were born, of course, but like for a minute there, the medical staff pulled me aside and they were like, we need your help with your wife because she's obviously got a one-track mind right now. The only thing in the universe she seems to care about is just God and those babies. And, she has her own needs. Like, we need her to get her rest. So can you please speak with her and help us keep an eye on this? And like, man, during those days, that passage got me through it. Everything is possible for him who believes. I was praying like, God, save my wife, save both of my sons, and everything is possible for him who believes. Those words came from Jesus' own mouth. The text of the book of Amos and the book of Obadiah is just as inspired. But in that season, there was something about the fact that Jesus said this to a father of a son who was struggling and who foamed at the mouth, that it just felt like it was contextually pretty applicable to me. Difference being the father in the text is the father of a son who's possessed by a demon. So this demonic possession trend, Bible wide, never ends well. And the nature of the beast's totalitarian, theocratic dictatorship is one that is absolutely empowered by Satan. It's even revealed to the crowd that this dragon, the ancient serpent, the devil, who's been deceiving mankind since the beginning, is the power behind the beast and his false prophet. And then by extension, then even the proxy of the image that's able to talk and then kill its detractors. So this demonic power infused into a world government system doesn't last, can't last, because it's all built on a lie, and God is just. So this is the context for these two verses. As you were watching, Daniel explains to Nebuchadnezzar, for verification and the fulfillment of prophecy, a stone broke off without a hand touching it, struck the statue on its feet of iron and fired clay, and crushed them. So this stone, without a hand touching it, okay, it just seems to come out of the heavens. Then the iron, the fired clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold. All right, so that's the bottom of the statue. That's iron specifically is Rome, and the fired clay are the feet. The bronze is Greece, the silver is Persia, the gold is Babylon, but they're all shattered and they become like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away and not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. At this point in Revelation, we've seen Jesus at Armageddon sweep in and absolutely kick tail and take names. And then beyond that, after the millennial reign, the battle with Gog and Magog, they reconverge 1,000 years later to make war again. And it's instantaneous. Fire from heaven consumes them all. There's no deliverance. There's no ark to spare you. There's no Lot and his family to be delivered out of Sodom and Gomorrah. There's not even like to say that there's no warning is true in a sense, but vastly untrue in another sense. All 7 seals were warnings. All 7 trumpets were undeniable warnings. All 7 bowls of wrath were warnings. And interspersed among these are literal angels flying over the earth proclaiming. Even in Revelation 11, there are 2 witnesses that just stand by the Wailing Wall and they share the gospel and they can defend themselves supernaturally. And as the world hears these, they recoil. They can't stand it. They hate hearing the gospel. They hate hearing this message of grace and deliverance and mercy for anyone who confesses Jesus as Lord, to the point that when the 2 witnesses die, they throw a party and exchange gifts. And for 3.5 days, they don't bury them. And then 3.5 days later, the 2 witnesses resurrect again, ascend into heaven. And then one of the great woes befalls the earth and thousands of people die in a massive earthquake. So this is the culture in the Antichrist's reign. And it's one that is hostile toward the gospel. It is not neutral, and it's not spiritually benign. It's not possible for such a culture to be objective, because such a culture is absolutely indwelt with Satan's will and is run by Satan. And they even know who's pulling the strings. And they still bow down to the image of the beast. They're even aware at this point that the image is a proxy and is endorsed by the false prophet, who is beholden to the beast, who is empowered by the devil. Like, look at how many degrees of separation there are. And it's all just like even revealed to the people of the earth. By the way, the power at work behind this idol and behind the false prophet and behind this world leader, it's all been the devil all along. And they're like, cool. And they continue on. It's incredible hard-heartedness, and it's not sustainable because God would not abide the victory lap of the devil. His time is short. The date is set. And so the demonic interference into the world government, I think, conveys the mixture of the fiery clay with the iron at the feet of the statue. Imagine this statue. We think about the gold layer as the most valuable, right? But Babylon was surpassed by Greece and Rome for sure. And Persia seemed to do a better job than Babylon did. So you can't really go on the layers of the statue in this vision from Daniel 2 that I believe is fulfilled in Revelation 19. You can't really go based on how precious the metals are. Rather, they seem to be kind of organized differently, right? Gold is kind of light, right? By the time we get to the iron and the bronze, we've gone through varying weights of these things, and the iron seems to be sturdier. Gold's a pretty soft metal. It's why people can check them with their teeth, like that meme from the Olympics. So this is the ultimate comeuppance. This destruction is inevitable, and this rock is Christ. Now, I've already talked about that in past devotions. We were going through Daniel, so I won't reiterate that. But look at the nature of Jesus's arrival and tell me if you think it's this rock, okay? Which again, back in our Daniel devotions, we showed the rock Bible-wide as a foreshadowing of Christ. Even Paul writes at one point, even like that rock is Christ. Talking about the rock at Meribah that is split, that people are able to drink water from, and the Exodus sands of the desert. Paul just outright says that rock was Christ. So the rock of our salvation has been prophesied, and now here he is. And he appears again in this vision of Daniel. There's this rock that just seems to come from the heavens. It's not thrown by a human hand. It just seems to come out of heaven and destroy the entire thing. And then it becomes a mountain that fills the whole earth. Then I saw heaven open, and there was a white horse. Its rider is called Faithful and True, and with justice he judges it and makes war. His eyes were like a fiery flame, and many crowns were on his head. He had a name written that no one knows except himself. He wore a robe dipped in blood. His name is called the Word of God. That's what we're preaching, Redemption Church. The armies that were in heaven followed him on white horses wearing pure white linen. A sharp sword came from his mouth so that he might strike the nations with it. He will rule them with an iron rod. He will also trample the winepress of the fierce anger of God the Almighty. And he has a name written on his robe and on his thigh, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Then I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he called out with a loud voice, saying to all the birds flying high overhead, "Come, gather together for the great supper of God, so that you may eat the flesh of kings, the flesh of military commanders, the flesh of the mighty, the flesh of horses and of their riders, and the flesh of everyone, both free and slave, small and great." I saw the beast, the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to wage war against the rider on the horse and against his army. But the beast was taken prisoner, and along with it the false prophet who had performed the signs in its presence. He deceived those who accepted the mark of the beast and those who worshipped its image with these signs. Both of them were thrown alive into the lake of fire that burns with sulfur. The rest were killed with the sword that came from the mouth of the rider on the horse, and all the birds ate their fill of their flesh. Eat your heart out, George R.R. Martin. This is undeniably the return of Christ, and it's absolutely a slaughter of the forces of evil. It is that stone that comes flying out of heaven and this mountain that reigns over the earth. This is the Battle of Armageddon, and it's kind of short. And it leads to the millennial reign of Christ. And so he reigns for 1,000 years. And at the end of that 1,000 years, Satan is released from captivity and then summarily defeated. Fire just comes down from heaven. And that's the ending. And then comes judgment. The very next passage after that, I believe, is the great white throne judgment. So that's my take. I believe that Jesus is that rock that came from the sky, that destroyed the statue of nations and successive empires, and then became a mountain that filled the whole earth. I believe that Daniel 2 is fulfilled in Revelation 19. Look at the coherence of Scripture across millennia. And consider, even if you don't agree with my take that Jesus is that rock that destroys the statue and becomes a mountain that fills the earth in Daniel's interpretation, and recounting of Nebuchadnezzar's vision. Even if you think I'm off track in my interpretation, you can't deny just a face value reading, employing just a good faith, honest, historical grammatical reading of Revelation 19, that Jesus is back and he wins. That there's no doubt about that. All of this has been foretold. The grace that seems to be missing from the usual outpourings of God's wrath throughout the Bible is actually in what we're doing right now. The fact that it's all been foretold, the fact that it's all been prophesied, so that as these events take place, not a single soul can say they weren't warned. This is the ultimate victory of Jesus, and it's been foretold ahead of time. Every other time God's poured out his wrath, there's always this deliverance. There's always this merciful, gracious deliverance from it. There are always some who are spared. There's always the remnant who is saved, and the rest receive God's wrath. But there's no such qualifier here. There's no immediate warning that the fire from heaven is about to come down and consume all these armies that have come all this way. But the warnings have been there. They have been there not only throughout the book of Revelation, the warnings were in Daniel as well, centuries before Revelation was written. So that's the grace. The deliverance is actually right now. The deliverance is current. There's no warning when fire comes from heaven at the absolute last battle whereupon the devil is cast along with death itself into this lake of fire that burns with sulfur. There's no warning that it's coming. There's no deliverance along the side. It's the last time there's ever going to be an outpouring of wrath for eternity. It's the last time there ever need be wrath, because evil will remain from that point through the eternal future forever defeated. And there will not be another angelic rebellion after that. This is, I think, partly why we don't get inflicted with heavenly amnesia when we enter into glory. Rather, he wipes our tears from our eyes. That's what the text actually says. And so this is the eternal future that God creates. And here we are studying now the gracious warning ahead of time. Both Daniel and Revelation prophesy this. Look at how gracious God is. Thank him for his mercy and endeavor to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with as many people as you can today.